His hand was still on the knob. I could feel the sound of the latch catching behind me. That faint metallic click echoed too loud in that room, and I didn't move. I didn't say anything. I didn't tell him to stop. His chest was warm against my back. His hand slid to my waist, not rough, not hesitant, but like he'd been there before. My knees buckled slightly when he pressed in. I braced my hands on the dresser, but even the wood felt slippery. The curtains swayed near the cracked open window, letting in the smell of pollen and old fabric. The floor creaked once when he shifted, and my breath caught with it. I heard myself let out this tiny, stupid sound, not a word, just air and weakness. I thought I'd scream, or shove him off. But when he touched the back of my neck, just the edge of his fingers, I leaned into it. My body leaned in anyway. I hated it. Or I should have. I think I did. Some lines don't get crossed in one step. They fade until you don't see them anymore. I should explain not to justify it just so it makes some kind of sense, but even now, I'm not sure I understand it. My name's Dana. I'm 42. I have a husband named Mike. We've been married for 17 years. He's not cruel. He's not absent. He's just steady, predictable, which sounds like a good thing until you realize you've stopped reacting to anything because nothing surprises you anymore. The man who closed that door was Caleb. He's Mike's cousin, technically his younger second cousin, but everyone just calls him Caleb. He's 30, a military contractor who sometimes comes through town and crashes in the guest bedroom for a night or two when his flights change. I'd never looked at him twice, not like that. But last week, that Tuesday, I remember everything shifted in the smallest ways. I was cleaning the guest room while Mike was out getting the car inspected. Caleb's flight was cancelled the night before, and he had nowhere else to stay. He'd left his boots by the door caked in some pale desert dust. I remember brushing the heel with a towel and thinking, why does this smell like heat? He walked in as I was straightening the fitted sheet. Just walked in, not knocking. His shirt was damp. He'd run 4 miles, he said, and the sweat had darkened the sides under his arms. I'll shower. Sorry, he said quickly, not meeting my eyes. But he didn't leave right away. He stood there for another second too long, and I don't know why I noticed, but he looked tired, not physically, but hollow. His mouth opened like he wanted to ask something, but then he nodded, turned and went down the hall. The next morning I woke up earlier than usual. I stood in the hallway for 10 minutes, pretending to check the thermostat. I heard movement behind the guest room door. Not loud, just fabric shifting. That's when it started, the hovering. We moved around each other like nothing was wrong, but the space between us was getting smaller. The looks lasted too long. The silences longer. And yesterday, no 2 days ago, I'd made banana bread. He'd said he liked it when we were sitting on the porch, talking about grocery stores of all things. I baked it without thinking. I told myself it wasn't for him. But I'd wrapped a piece in foil and left it on the edge of the counter where I knew he'd see it. I watched from the hallway mirror as he picked it up and smiled. So when I passed by the guest room and the door was slightly open just an inch, barely more, I didn't stop. I didn't walk away. I knocked soft. He opened it fully, and I stepped inside. It wasn't a decision. It was a moment, and I didn't stop it. That's when he stepped behind me. That's when the door closed, and I froze. I wanted to back out. I wanted to tell him this was a mistake, but I couldn't even find the strength to say no. Why didn't I say no? Was it because I didn't want to, or because I wanted him to decide for me? I don't know if that makes it worse. But that's why I'm telling this now, not because I'm proud, not because I'm trying to be forgiven, but because I need to ask, have you ever stood still and let something happen just so you didn't have to carry the weight of choosing? Maybe that's cowardice. Maybe it's a cry for someone to tell me enough. If this story feels like a warning, or if it sounds like something someone close to you might do or has done, I want you to leave a comment. Not for me, But maybe someone out there needs to know they're not the only one. I'll keep going, but only if you want me to. The next morning, I stood in front of the washing machine watching it hum through the spin cycle. The banana bread pan was still in the sink. I hadn't touched it. His towel, the one with the small rip at the corner, lay draped over the chair, faintly damp. I could smell the fabric softener I hadn't changed in years. That's the thing about guilt. It clings to ordinary things. Mike was still asleep. He'd worked late the night before fixing an HVAC leak in a church basement. I'd asked if he wanted tea. He said no. That was the entire exchange. I remember kneeling to gather the laundry basket. My knees cracked. I've had joint issues since 35. I don't know why I noticed it then, but I did. I noticed everything. The hum of the washer, the way the morning light made the tile look colder, and the guest room door still closed. He didn't leave right away. Caleb, he stayed another night, said his flight had been delayed again, said it like it was nothing. I didn't ask questions, but my body had already started acting differently. I flinched at every creak in the floorboards. I washed the same shirt twice. I wiped the same counter 3 times, like scrubbing the memory off. I didn't eat much that morning. Toast with too much butter. It sat heavy in my chest. Around 10:20, I walked into the guest room. He wasn't there. The bed was made. Crisp corners, military style. And something about that made me want to cry. Instead, I opened the window. The wind was dry, carrying the smell of our neighbor's rosemary bush. That's when I heard it, his voice, low talking on the phone out on the back deck. I stood behind the curtain like a damn teenager. I listened to nothing in particular, just the sound of him being outside, like the world still made sense for him. And I wanted to smash something, not because he sounded fine, but because I didn't. I started thinking about the way he touched the small of my back the day before. It wasn't demanding. It was just claiming. I thought about that touch for hours. I took a shower around noon. I used Mike's body wash, the one that smells like cedar, as if it could put me back in place, as if scent could fix character. But nothing helped. I tried to distract myself. I opened the cabinet under the sink and pulled out the old plastic box where I keep receipts. That's what I do when I don't want to think. I sought receipts. I found one from 7 years ago, our anniversary dinner, a steakhouse. Mike ordered lamb. I remembered because it came out rare and he didn't send it back. He just chewed and smiled and said, "It's fine." That was Mike's thing. Everything was always fine. Maybe that's why I didn't stop Caleb. Because he didn't treat me like I was fine. At 2:13 p.m., I walked past Caleb in the hallway. We didn't speak. But he looked at me just once, and I felt it again. The drop in my stomach, the unsteadiness in my knees, and then I remembered I hadn't taken my anxiety pill that morning. I sat on the edge of the bathtub and dry swallowed it. Here's something I never admitted out loud. Sometimes when I feel invisible, I want someone to see too much of me. That night I went through my phone and deleted all my notes. I don't know why. Just felt like starting fresh. But I kept one sentence. I'd written it 3 months ago. It said, "When did I become someone I wouldn't recognize if I passed her on the street?" The washing machine buzzed again. I stood up like I'd been shot. And I knew even if nothing else happened, I wasn't done. Not with Caleb, not with what I let happen. And the worst part is, I don't even think I want to be done. The hallway light flickered. I'd told Mike months ago that the bulb was dying. He said he'd replace it, but like most things in our house, it just stayed half broken. Caleb was brushing his teeth in the guest bathroom. I could hear the faucet running, the clink of the cup against porcelain. The sound of him spitting small everyday sounds that shouldn't have sent shivers down my spine. But they did. I was walking toward the linen closet when he opened the door. He didn't say anything, just stood there in a faded t-shirt and sweats, drying his mouth with a towel. The towel was mine. I knew because it had a bleach stain the shape of Idaho. I should have walked past him, said goodnight, closed the door to my room and disappeared into routine. But I didn't. I stood still. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching me like I was something fragile and doomed. I said, "You brushed your teeth early." He shrugged. "Early flight tomorrow." The silence that followed felt heavier than it should have. Then he asked, "Are you okay?" No one had asked me that in weeks, not like they meant it. I answered, "You shouldn't ask me that." He looked away like he was trying to respect something, or pretend he hadn't already crossed it, but his voice, low and unsteady, said more than his body did. "I didn't come here to complicate things, Nora." I nodded, but my throat felt tight. "It's already complicated." He took one step forward, close enough that I could see the nick on his jaw from shaving too fast. I whispered, "I keep thinking about the door." He tilted his head. "What door? The one you closed that night?" He was quiet for a beat, then said, "You didn't move." That sentence knocked the air out of me. He added slower this time, "I waited. I wasn't going to touch you unless you stayed." I felt a flash of heat in my chest, not desire. Something messier, angrier, because he made it sound like I had control, like it had been my decision. Maybe it had, but it didn't feel that way. I whispered, "That wasn't permission." He looked like I'd slapped him. "I know." And just like that, the air between us went cold. I turned to leave. My hand grazed the light switch, but I didn't flip it. He stopped me, with just one line. His voice was tight. "Do you want it to stop?" I turned my face halfway. "I don't know what I want." He stepped back. "Then I won't make you decide tonight." That was the problem. He kept giving me space, just enough to feel like the choices were mine, but they didn't feel like choices. They felt like consequences waiting to happen. When I went back to my room, I sat on the floor next to the bed. Not on it, next to it. I picked at the carpet, counted the pills in my nighttime bottle, tapped my foot to the sound of the dishwasher. Then I wrote this in my notes app. I hate how soft his voice is when I'm the one breaking. The hallway stayed dark that night. No one came, no one left. But sleep never showed up either, so I just laid there, staring at the ceiling fan, wondering how close you can get to a collapse before you stop calling it survival. If this story feels like your silence, subscribe. Or don't. Just don't pretend you haven't been here too. It wasn't planned. I was sorting whites from colors, mindlessly folding pillowcases and old shirts. The washing machine had just finished a cycle, that sharp click before the silence. The rain had started maybe 15 minutes earlier. Not heavy, just a steady drizzle that blurred the glass and made the outside world feel far away. I didn't hear him come in, but suddenly Caleb was standing in the doorway of the laundry room. His shirt was damp, not from the rain, I realized, but from sweat. He must have come back from his run. "I forgot my charger," he said like that. Explained why he was barefoot and still breathing hard. I nodded. "It's probably still in the kitchen." He didn't leave. Instead, his eyes dropped to the folded laundry between us. My hands were on one of Mike's old undershirts. I set it down like it had burned me. "I shouldn't be here," Caleb said finally. I looked at him. He looked exhausted. Not from the run, from restraint. And then too fast he stepped in, closed the door behind him. That door had no lock. Just a wooden latch that never caught right unless you pulled it slow. He pulled it slow. I didn't say a word. He came toward me like someone trying to stop himself, with every step and failing. His hand brushed the dryer knob, then landed on the table next to mine. His breath was still ragged. I could smell the salt, the cotton of his damp shirt, the faint trace of my husband's detergent still in the room. He touched the small of my back. I flinched. He said barely above a whisper, "I didn't just want that night. I've been holding this in for years. Years." That word hit harder than it should have. I turned to face him. My knees brushed his. I didn't lean in, but I didn't step back either. I said, I can't do this. He nodded, but his hands stayed where they were. You already did. And I broke. The next part, it wasn't violent. It wasn't even rushed. It was slow, sad, hands that trembled, fingers that hesitated, breath that came too loud in the silence. The edge of the dryer cold against my hip, his mouth at my neck. The light above us flickered once, like it had seen something it wasn't supposed to. I didn't say his name, he didn't say mine. There was no urgency, only defeat. When it ended, he didn't move right away. I reached for a towel to wipe my face, but there wasn't one. So I used the inside of my sleeve. He stepped back first, adjusted his shirt, picked up the charger like that had been the reason all along. Before he left, he looked at the door latch, wiggled it like he was testing how long it could have held. Then he said, "You don't owe me anything." I wanted to ask, "But what do I owe myself?" Now I didn't. I just stared at the pile of laundry. Some of it still smelled like Mike. Some of it didn't. The mirror was fogged over, not from me. I hadn't gotten in yet. The water had been running for 10 minutes, maybe more. I just stood there, leaning against the sink, one hand pressed against the tile wall, like I needed it to hold me upright. My underwear was still around my thighs. I hadn't even stepped in. Down the hall I could hear the dull thump of the television. Mike's voice now and then on the phone with someone from work, probably. He didn't know. Of course he didn't. The smell of the detergent was still on my shirt. The same one I'd folded yesterday. That room, that dryer, it hadn't left me. I gripped the sink so hard my knuckles hurt. I kept thinking about Caleb's hands, not how they felt, but where they'd been. How gently they moved when they shouldn't have, like he was scared to ruin something. And the worst part was, he hadn't. Not yet. But I had. I finally pulled my shirt over my head and stepped under the water. It was hot. Too hot. It stung the back of my neck. My shoulder blades. I stayed under it like I could scrub something away, but the water hit me, and all I could think of was the flicker of the laundry room light. How it blinked once, and then stayed still. How maybe it had seen what I did, and decided not to judge. I used Mike's body wash. His razor was still where he left it. I sat down on the floor of the shower, the water slapping against my back, and I buried my face in my knees. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but I couldn't find the right reason. Was it shame, or was it the quiet? Because Caleb hadn't called, hadn't texted. And maybe I didn't want him to, but I wanted something. I dried off slowly, the towel too rough on skin that felt raw. When I opened the cabinet to grab lotion, I saw the Band-Aid box half empty, edges worn. Mike had bought that years ago after I'd cut my hand on a can opener. He kept restocking it, even though I never asked. I touched it without meaning to. A knock came on the door. "You okay?" Mike asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just tired." He paused. "You've been in there a while." "I know." The shadow of his feet stayed by the door a moment longer, then walked away. I pressed my palm flat against the back of the door. It was warm where he'd just been standing. The floor squeaked as I stepped out. That sound, it would always remind me of crossing something I couldn't uncross. If you've ever stood soaking wet in a room that once felt safe and questioned whether the version of you who walked in is the same one walking out, then leave a comment. Tell me how long it took before the steam finally cleared. I was folding sheets when Caleb walked in. It wasn't the way he opened the door. It was the way he didn't knock. The door was already cracked. But he didn't ask. He just stepped in. And I didn't stop him. He stood there a second, one of his hands still on the doorknob, like he hadn't decided if he was staying. "I'm leaving in an hour," he said. I nodded. I kept folding. "I wasn't going to come in," he added, his voice lower. But I saw the light was on. It was always on. That room didn't get much light. You didn't answer my message, he said. I didn't know what to say. He looked down at his shoes. They were still dusty from yesterday. He hadn't changed. You don't have to say anything, he said finally. I didn't want it to feel like I disappeared. You didn't disappear, I said. You just stepped out of something we shouldn't have been in. He didn't move for a long while, just looked around like he needed a reason to be there that wasn't me. I don't regret it, he said. I do, I said, but not for the reasons you think. His jaw shifted. I regret that it didn't feel like a mistake, that it felt like the first time in years someone actually noticed I was still here. A car door slammed outside. We both froze. Probably the neighbor. But we stood there like something had cracked. I never wanted to be the thing that made you feel worse, he said. You weren't, I said. You just showed me how lonely I've let myself become. He walked over to the window, drew the curtain back a bit, like he needed a reason to look away. I watched the muscles in his back shift through his shirt. I remembered the feel of them beneath my hands, but I didn't reach for him. Do you think you'll tell him, he asked. I shook my head. I don't think I'll tell anyone, I said, but I'll never be able to lie to myself again. He nodded. Then after a beat, he reached over and closed the door gently behind him, just like before. But this time I was alone. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the folds in the sheets. They didn't smell like him. They didn't smell like anything. I picked at the corner of my thumb. There was a hangnail there, sharp, painful. I didn't pull it, just let it throb, because I needed to feel something I could explain. I don't know what I lost, but I know what I gave up to feel seen. And now the house is full of light, and I still feel like I'm hiding. What do you do when the worst part of your day is the part you want back?